Welcome to Ask Her at ProRevenge, where Karen won't stop gossiping about her family, so her own daughter gets revenge. I have some awesome stories for you today, so let's jump into it. This first post is titled, "This is how I stopped the gossip for good." My mom had a fairly consistent habit of gossiping and sharing quite personal information around. We knew she was doing it, but she would adamantly deny ever having done such a thing. I wish I could remember what she'd done that finally made me snap. It can't even have been that important. It was just the millionth time. And for once, I wanted her to admit what she'd done and know that we knew too. So, we set up the sting. My friend Jane and I approached my mom and told her that Jane was pregnant. She wasn't ready to tell her mom yet, and she was really worried what people would think about her having a baby so young. So she didn't want anyone to know yet, so it had to be top secret. Having set the trap, I always figured within a few weeks or so, I would have some evidence we could use. But I was so wrong. The very next day, my sister, grandma, and neighbor all asked me how my young pregnant friend was doing. When I was asked by a lady who worked at the supermarket, that same day, I figured this had gone far enough and went home to confront my mom, only to have my dad ask how Jane was doing. I confronted my mom right there in front of my dad, which is when she started with the usual, "I would never do that. They must have heard from somebody else" routine. I explained very shortly and clearly that we had fed her a lie to see how far it spread, and the reaction was glorious. My mom's mouth fell open and she just had nothing to say at all. My dad, on the other hand, fell back on the sofa roaring with laughter, bemoaning the fact that he hadn't thought of this years ago. It was a moment I will treasure forever, and the point was thoroughly made. Now that my mom was aware of what had happened, I was able to satisfy all further inquiries towards my friend's health with the true story, and my mom's audience for any further gossip was somewhat reduced. Alright, this next post is titled, "I Destroyed a Brewery." Nearly 20 years ago, I was a brewer at a brew pub. The owner was a complete lunatic and an utter a-hole. Before I was hired, he had already purchased the brewery equipment used from a closed microbrewery. Problem is, it was literally 4 times larger than it needed to be for the size of the place. And to top it off, he was selling Big 3 beers too. And it was a Pugsley system. Brewers will know. But I made it work. Even got the stupid Ringwald yeast to behave. But I only needed to brew about 3 or 4 times a month. I've worked at places we brewed that much a week, so I wasn't needed anywhere near 40 hours a week. And I was salaried, so he decided I needed to work night manager at least 2 nights a week to fill out my hours. That was fine, it was an easy gig. After our first year, he advertised a huge anniversary event with specials on food and drink, food specials, commercial beer specials, and didn't even mention that we made our own, much less put anything on special. Idiot. Not too long after, I got my first vacation in over a year, and he was mad at me for insisting. But life was stressful, not least of which because my mom was in hospice, stage 4 cancer. But her condition was such that she said my wife and I should go, she'll be fine. So we went camping for a week. The day before our trip was to end, we got word she had died, 2 days earlier. My family didn't know how to reach us, only she did. We rushed home, a 6-hour drive, and on the way I called my boss and told him what had happened and I probably wouldn't be in on Monday as planned. This was Saturday. I found out later from a bartender that he then moaned at the chef that I was probably going to want more time off. I did in fact take Monday off, but I went in on Tuesday to do my night manager shift. Now, my mom's wishes were to be cremated, with no embalming, so by the time I got home, she was already cremated. So the memorial service was planned for 2 weeks later, right before Labor Day weekend. There was to be a memorial service Thursday and the interment for the family Friday. So I planned and made sure that the servers were full and I wouldn't need to brew for at least a week. That Wednesday, the boss comes and tells me he wants me to work night shift on Thursday and Friday. Normally I did Tuesday and Wednesday nights. To make up for the time off I'd taken to help my dad out. He wasn't handling it well. He wanted me to come in after my mom's funeral. I flatly refused, at which point he said fine, but I'd have to work a double shift Saturday then. I nearly lost it. I walked away, and after I cooled off, I went back and told him I was no longer going to do the manager shifts, and that I wanted to switch to hourly for brewery work only. He was angry, but stuck. He needed me in the brewery. Things started calming down, but after a few weeks, I noticed my paychecks were for less than I anticipated. I hadn't been tracking my clock in, clock out very closely because prior to this, I only clocked in and out, so I was logged in to do manager functions. But I happened to have a couple of slips in my wallet, and because I still had manager access, discovered he'd been altering my hours, eventually cheating me out of around 20 hours in just 6 weeks. And that's when I hatched my plan. I was done with this a-hole. Remember that ringwood yeast? Well, in a brewery, you harvest yeast from a fermenting batch to use to brew a later one. And since we were slow, it often had to be stored for a while before it got used. But you had to use it within 30 days. 21 is better, or it goes sour and starts dying. Normally, I would take other steps to ensure it stayed clean and healthy, but not on the last batch I harvested. It just went into the cold room and stayed there. I stopped going in very often, just logging tank levels to make sure nothing ran out and made him suspicious. I would even go in to make sure he wasn't in that day and later message him that I'd brewed. I hadn't. And waited. On day 45, after I got the check for the last hours I worked, I overnighted my keys in with the resignation letter. He called me the next day, screaming. I told him I knew what he'd done and wouldn't be back. I don't know what he looked like when he went into the brewery cellar and discovered he had empty fermenters, nearly empty serving tanks, dead yeast, and almost no grain. Pity, really. After that, he tried to hire my former assistant, who was working at another brew pub by then because the a-hole had forced me to fire him to save money. He laughed at him. He then apparently got the underage son of one of the brewers at a nearby brew pub, which he had originally been part of, to brew for him, but had to fire him because the kid kept getting caught drunk down in the cellar. So he tried doing it, and I heard they stopped brewing entirely eventually. About a year after I left, he folded. Staff showed up one morning to padlock doors. Drove through there a few years back. Not only gone, but building was torn down. I felt like stopping to sow the ground with salt, but I was in a hurry. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed those first 2 stories. Before we get into the next story, if you guys could please do me a huge favor and hit that like button down below. It really does help the video out. And make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any future content. This next post is titled, Don't Scam a Bot Developer. I develop bots for people on Discord, a chat platform for those who somehow don't know. One day I checked for hiring in a developer server and saw a job of making a simple bot for a cafe group. I messaged the owner and got the job. I coded the bot the next day and waited for a response from the owner. It turns out that the owner was taking a break from Discord, so about a week later when she was finally back, she DM'd me and I fixed the final bug and showed them the bot. Right away they said, "Thank you for the bot, have a great day," took away my admin role from the server and blocked me. However, it didn't occur to her that I might be able to give myself admin with the bot. I immediately set the permissions that everyone gets on join to administrator. I am an admin in a bigger Discord server with about 300 members. I mentioned everyone and told them to join this server, and of course, they noticed they have admin. Within 10 minutes, the server is completely destroyed. I haven't seen their reaction since I left the server, but I bet they will never scam anyone ever again. Alright, that's going to wrap up today's ProRevenge video. I hope you guys enjoyed those 3 stories. If you did, definitely drop a comment down below letting me know what your favorite story was today. Hit that like button down below. Make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any future stories. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.